Welcome back to New World Next Week. I'm James Corbett of CorbettReport.com.
And I'm James Evan Pilato of MediaMonarchy.com. I do not feel that there is any threat at this time. Good night, everyone. No, just kidding. We got that story plus ChatGPT Gov. But first, again, a lot of decades keep happening next week again. Trump says U.S. will take over Gaza Strip. President Trump said on Tuesday that the U.S. would take over the Gaza Strip, a surprise announcement he made while speaking with reporters at the White House during a press conference with, yes, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Again, none of this is a surprise. The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip and we'll do a job with it too. We'll own it and be responsible for dismantling all the dangerous unexploded bombs and other weapons on the site, leave the site, get rid of the destroyed buildings, level it out, create an economic development that'll supply unlimited numbers of jobs and housing for people of the area. That's a quote. The president said earlier that the Palestinians must be removed from Gaza permanently, making it clear the plan will involve the ethnic cleansing of the territory despite strong resistance from neighboring Arab states. The plan also implies that the U.S. would rebuild Gaza for Jewish settlers. Trump was asked who would live in Gaza under his plan, and he replied, quote, the world's people, and suggested some Palestinians may also be allowed. Probably have to have some sort of biometric ID system, maybe. He said, I think the entire world, representatives from all over the world will be there and they'll live there too. Palestinians also will live there. Many people will live there. Trump also said he wouldn't rule out deploying troops to Gaza. When asked if the plan meant he would send troops, he said, if it's necessary, we'll do that. We're going to take over that peace and develop it. Create thousands and thousands of jobs. It'll be something the entire Middle East can be very proud of. I see long-term ownership position. Again, these are quotes. Bringing great stability to that part of the Middle East. Everybody I've spoken to, this was not a decision made lightly. Everybody loves the idea of the U.S. owning that piece of land, developing and creating thousands of jobs with something that'll be magnificent in a magnificent area nobody would really know. They look and all they see is death and destruction and rubble. Netanyahu, of course, chimed in and said, President Trump is taking it to a much higher level. He sees a different future for that piece of land. Again, they talk about it like it's just some third-party imaginary thing. He sees a different future for that piece of land that's been the focus of so much terrorism and attacks against us, so many trials and tribulations. He has a different idea, and it's worth paying attention to this. He's exploring it, and of something that could change history. Later on Tuesday, Trump's Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff appeared on Fox, endorsed the president's plan, saying a better life for Palestinians is not necessarily tied to the physical space that you're in today. When asked what message Trump was trying to send by calling for a U.S. takeover of Gaza, Witkoff said, quote, he's telling the Middle East that the last 50 years of doing things was not the correct way of doing things, and he's going to change it up. Secretary of State Marco Rubio also endorsed the U.S. takeover and ethnic cleansing of Gaza. Gaza must be free, all caps, from Hamas. As Trump shared today, the United States stands ready to make Gaza beautiful again. A U.S. takeover of the Gaza Strip would require Israel to restart its genocidal war and could potentially involve the U.S. in direct conflict. Since coming into office, Trump's begun advancing billions of dollars of new weapons shipments for Israel, funded by the U.S. military aid. U.S. aid? I heard that was bad. Hamas would fiercely resist a U.S. takeover, and the group has replaced about all the fighters it's lost, according to U.S. intelligence, despite Israel's mass slaughter of Palestinians. As I believe I said just last week, again, watch, the Democrats are what pass for being tough on Israel. And this is, again, we get CFR, Tulsi, and RFKJ, and some good positive changes have been made, or at least are in motion. This is all the terrible bad that we knew was coming that would, of course, wash over any of the good. Deaths from Israel's attacks on Gaza close to 62,000. Oh, wait, sorry, those are undercounted by 41%. Gaza 2035, so maybe that's the new slogan. Netanyahu's plan to build smart city over blood-soaked Palestine. And going back to May of 2023, BlackRock plots to buy Ukraine. And I'll throw in, James, of course, a lot going on. Zelensky says, I don't know where all that money went. James, there's a lot.
It's a lot. If this was any sort of normal time of politics as we've known it throughout our entire lifetime, I would probably situate this incredible pronouncement, plan, whatever this is, in this context of every American president wants to make their legacy project bringing peace to the Middle East. I mean, we saw Clinton in his lame duck term with the Oslo Accords and Camp David and all of that. Oh, don't worry. The handshake, I'm bringing peace to the Middle East. Well, that didn't quite work out, did it? Bush wanted to bring peace to the Middle East by completely reshaping the Middle East by bombing it to smithereens. That didn't quite work out either. Obama, of course, made his overtures, but didn't quite get along with Netanyahu, so that never quite worked out. Every American president wants to be the one, and Trump no exception, I guess. But I'm not sure that we can put this in the context of just another president making big promises that he'll never deliver on, because, well, we've seen over the past few weeks, well, he's certainly at least trying to do things. So if he goes ahead with this, what would it actually mean? I guess it means that all those people that proudly sported their Make America Great hats can now cross out the words and write Make Gaza Beautiful Again. And of course, by Make Gaza Beautiful Again, it means bomb them to smithereens in a genocidal act of clear war crime, and then force them all out somehow, and then Israel takes over. Beautiful again. See? Wonderful. Isn't this exactly what all of you MAGA guys voted for? Send your sons and daughters off to die in the next bloodbath in the Middle East. Well, we'll see. We'll see how this eventuates. I'm holding my breath, waiting for a peaceful resolution of all of this problem in the Middle East to just end, because Trump is going to go in and negotiate. I will continue holding my breath until that happens and hope I don't die. But having said that, that's my political analysis of this. Here's an analysis that is less political and more just human. I wouldn't even normally countenance this, but I have to ask people, at the very least, to just watch the press and conference where he was announcing this, with Trump standing on one side and Netanyahu on the other side. And Netanyahu's just basically watching Trump announce all of this. And the look on Netanyahu's face, I don't even know how to describe it. I have rarely ever visibly seen evil emanating off of a human being in the way that you can see it emanating off of Netanyahu. It is truly creepy to me. Maybe I'm the only one who sees that, but honestly, I haven't seen anything that weird in a political reaction since Chrystia Freeland was doing her Tweaky McTweakerson weirdness during the announcements of the trucker convoy protest crackdown in Canada. Anyway, take that for what it's worth. Probably not going to convince anyone who's not already convinced. But anyway, this is an intent, a clear intent statement of genocidal policy. That's what it looks like, at any rate, at face value. So we'll see what happens as a result of this.
Chrystia Freeland was most likely probably tweaking out on sweet primo, high-level Canadian socialized big pharma meds.
Fentanyl.
Netanyahu is an evil Mr. Burns on Christmas, getting more than he ever imagined that he was going to get for Christmas. James, I'm not in the notes, so I was typing it out as you were talking. Enlistment into the U.S. Armed Forces through the roof in the last 3 months since Trump was elected. So, hell, at least there are some people who are rah and are going to go for it. You gotta at least give it to them for that. Also, finally, those poor white South Africans are also going to get treated a little bit better now as well. A lot going on in the world, and we will do our best to go over it on this New World Next Week, episode 580. Rubio demands Panama reduce Chinese influence over the canal, or the U.S. will act. A few moments later, Panama says it will not renew Belt and Road agreement with China after Rubio visit. Astute New World Next Week watchers will know we have talked about Belt and Road many, many times here. Panama President Jose Raul Molina said Sunday that his country will not renew its memorandum of understanding with China to be a part of the Chinese Communist Party's Belt and Road Initiative. Speaking to reporters, Molina said the agreement is due for renewal in 2 years and his government's looking into the possibility of terminating it earlier. We're going to study the possibility of whether it can be finished earlier or not. I think it is due for renewal in 1 or 2 years. That doesn't exactly sound like a real strong, firm statement. It's like, yeah, we'll look into it. I think in like 2 years, I guess. Molina made the announcement, though, after the meeting with the new U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio in Panama City before all the spring breakers arrive, during which Rubio called on Panama to urgently address the CCP's influence over the region. Trump administration had accused the country of failing to ensure the U.S.-built Panama Canal's neutrality, which is a requirement set forth by the treaty concerning the permanent neutrality and operation of the Panama Canal of 1977. Remember, Jimmy Carter helped create Al-Qaeda and the Department of Education. That was another thing, James, just on our first story. Maybe what we are seeing is the destruction of the dominant political paradigm of exactly you and I's entire life. Basically, the last 50 years, everything that started with Carter is all being knocked down. That is to say, occulted back into the White House for a new form of lack of transparency. Sidebar. The treaty paved the way for the United States to hand control of the canal to Panama in 1999. I do not feel that there's any real threat at this time against the neutrality of the treaty, its validity, the Panamanian leader said. Panama signed the agreement to join China's global infrastructure project in 2017 under the former administration of President Juan Carlos Varela after it severed diplomatic ties with Taiwan. James, basically every country that isn't Russia or Israel has pretty much immediately caved in some way to the new bellicose U.S. administration.
That is right, and you are almost exactly right in what you say there. The last 50 years, I would just go a little bit further. The last 80 years of political reality is absolutely being pulverized in front of our eyes right now. I hope people understand the significance of what is happening right now, why it is happening, what it means for the long term. I will have more to say about this in the future, obviously, but I would hope people would start with an interesting document dossier that was just published to the National Security Archive on the Panama Canal Treaty Declassified, where they go through White House briefing memos, meeting minutes, telephone transcriptions, security documents, etc., talking about the story of the Panama Canal Treaty and how the handover came about, essentially going not just back to Carter, but all the way back to Kennedy, who wasn't able to push this forward. He didn't even want to negotiate on it because he knew he'd never get 2/3 of the Senate to hand over the Panama Canal. For what reason? Why would there be American interest in that? It talks about the subsequent LBJ negotiations, how that bled into the Ford and Nixon eras, and then ultimately towards Carter and the ultimate signing. And it quotes such people as, say, Henry Kissinger, who had an interesting part to play in this during the preparatory phases of what was eventually signed under Carter, but started, as I say, before that point. It says, for example, continued U.S. control of the Panama Canal looks like pure colonialism, Henry Kissinger advised President Gerald Ford during an NSC meeting in May 1975, 50 years ago. Internationally, failure to conclude a treaty is going to get us into a cause célèbre with harassment, demonstrations, bombing of embassies, Kissinger warned, according to a declassified memorandum that's being published by the National Security Archive. And people might remember, or maybe they don't, back in 1964, the riots in the Canal Zone that led to U.S. servicemen killing 20 Panamanians. This is, it's a big deal what is happening right now, and the back and forth that's been going on about this for a while. It was nicely put away when it was that treaty was signed in 1977, right? Or so people thought. And then now, of course, as we've seen, Rubio and Trump were talking about we're going to take it back or something very powerful is going to happen. And now they've seen the light, and maybe 2 years from now or sometime in the next couple of years, we'll take a look at it. Okay. So what does this really mean? Yes, the U.S. is coming along, thumping their chest, and countries are caving left and right, except, of course, as you mentioned, Israel or Russia or some other parts of the global chessboard. What does this mean? The best take that I've seen so far is from an article that is posted up on Zero Hedge. It's how Trump's dismantling of U.S. aid marks a seismic, historic shift in America's role in the world. And it starts off, obviously, talking about the U.S. aid story, but it goes into a deeper analysis. It says, we're looking at a seismic shift in the U.S.'s relationship with the world. One, the U.S. is dismantling its foreign interference apparatus, like U.S. aid. Two, Marco Rubio stating that, link, we're now in a multipolar world with multi-great powers in different parts of the planet, and that, quote, the post-war global order is not just obsolete, it is now a weapon being used against us. And 3, the tariffs on supposed allies like Mexico, Canada, or the EU. This is the US effectively saying our attempt at running the world is over. To each his own, we're now just another great power, not the indispensable nation. And it goes on to say, hegemony was going to end sooner or later, and now the US is basically choosing to end it on its own terms. It is the post-American world order brought to you by America itself. Even the tariffs on allies viewed under this angle make sense, as it redefines the concept of allies. The Americans don't want, or maybe rather can't afford vassals anymore, but rather relationships that evolve based on current interests. Acknowledging the existence of a multipolar world and choosing to operate within it, rather than trying to maintain an increasingly costly global hegemony, couldn't be delayed much further. It looks messy, but it's probably better than maintaining the fiction of American primacy until it eventually collapses under its own weight. Yep, the 80 years of post-World War II global order as it existed is being pulverized before our very eyes. Controlled demolition style? I don't know. I'll leave that up to you to pontificate on. But I think this is incredibly important, and it is the... as they point out here, I think it is the acknowledgement, as Rubio is even talking about, of the multipolar world order. It is on. It is happening right now. America is not the global world hegemon anymore. It's just another player at the table, and it will use its force. And you better believe when the existing unipolar world power of the past 80 years starts beating its chest and making threats, people are going to fold absolutely instantly at first. But that hard power becomes less and less likely to be effective over time as people start realizing, oh, okay, you're not our ally. Now we're going to start banding together. And suddenly things that were politically unimaginable become politically imaginable. Hey, maybe Canada and Mexico and all these other countries, the EU, maybe they do have their bread buttered more on the BRICS side of this equation than the US side. Things that we would never have imagined just a few years ago are now politically feasible and thinkable. And you better believe that country after country is now starting to plot what they're going to do to react to this. So everything we have ever known politically, geopolitically, is completely up in the air right now. It's completely being destroyed in front of our eyes. This is an incredibly important moment. And for good or ill, I mean, yes, the global order that existed, we didn't want that. We did want a new world order, but what kind of new world order? Well, I think we're going to find out in the coming years.
So if it's 80 years and not 50 years, that's not just our lives, that's our older brothers and our parents as well. We will be cogitating and examining all these stories for a long, long time. Again, if it were just a conspiracy event, like, oh my gosh, we're going to be analyzing that shooter event or that false flag bombing for a long, long time. This is just as important and just as shrouded in the fog of conspiracy bait and war and propaganda. Man, again, just really like trying to maybe get these things on the record. I don't know if you'd call this episode 580 the headline episode. It's more Trump dates, yes. We can't give you every important story anymore in this format. Maybe we could have, James, 15 years ago when we had the RSS feeds and it wasn't this new multipolar world. God, I almost thought you were reading the Karl Rove quote earlier when you were doing the Marco Rubio thing. It's like the reality has changed, so don't get too hung up because it's going to change again. I was just going to say, it's not 15 years ago. We know that people out there, you got a lot of options for your edutainment, so we do appreciate you here in New World Next Week. Our final story, just a few things we've been following recently. Google torpedoes no AI for weapons rules. This from the always snarky, theregister.com. And again, everything we talk about is always listed down in the show notes. So if you can't share these episodes with your older brothers or your parents, you always use the links. Google's published a new set of AI principles that don't mention its previous pledge not to use the tech to develop weapons or surveillance tools that violate international norms. PitchEye's 2018 Declaration of Principles, James, it's like Citizen Kane, destined to fail. So let's make sure we write it down. Added a notice advising readers that as of February 4th, 2025, Google has made updates to our AI principles that can be found at ai.google. I didn't know that was a thing. These updated principles don't mention applications Google won't work on, nor pledges to not use AI for harmful purposes or weapons development. Are you keeping up with me? Meanwhile, Google's rivals happily provide machine learning models and IT services to the United States military and government at least. Microsoft has argued America's armed forces deserve the best tools, which in the Windows giant's mind is technology. I mean, Amazon's the exact same way. OpenAI, Amazon, IBM, Oracle, and Anthropic work with Uncle Sam on various projects, even Google these days. The internet titan is maybe just less openly squeamish about it. James, you want me to fly through all these and I'll throw it to you at the end?
Yeah, just plow through.
The aforementioned OpenAI debuts ChatGPT Gov, yes, for governments. This from the newly kind of strange activistpost.com. They changed hands. I'm not used to it, man. We believe the U.S. government's adoption of artificial intelligence, including initiatives like ChatGPT Gov, can boost efficiency and productivity and is crucial for maintaining and enhancing America's global leadership in this technology. ChatGPT Gov. Doesn't the G already stand for government? Is a chat government patsy training? You have to double check me on that. Again, James, you're listening to The Morning Monarchy. You're seeing some of my wild cover art that I am creating using AI-free platforms. I'm enjoying the AI audiovisual stuff really just almost, I hate to say it, it's just for the lulz. It's like, do you remember the G.I. Joe things in 2000? Body massage. And they were just the Dadaist, goofy-ass parody nature, plunderphonics, negative land, pranks. People out there, punks, know what I'm talking about. But I don't want to hang out with it. This is the weirdness. Like, man, this used to be friends that would get together and do pranks and do pictures and do art and do parodies and music and all those things. But now, it's bizarre. Not saying it's kind of bad. R.I.P. Keith Harmon, courageous investigative journalist who exposed lies regarding the Rwandan genocide, which has flared up big time in the midst of everything else flaring up. Congo enters chaos spiral as Rwanda-backed insurgents invade. Meanwhile, the Sweden undersea cable follies continue. Sweden says no sabotage in Baltic Sea cable damage, releases seized ship, but Russia? The mainstream media narrative of Russia's shadow fleet vessels traversing the Baltic Sea in a clandestine anti-NATO operation to sabotage vital underwater communications cables linking European nations continues to unravel at a rapid pace. Again, we're not in the business of defending them, but it's just we go where the evidence follows. Swedish authorities have issued the results of their official investigation into Malta-flagged Vesien ship following the discovery of damage to a fiber optic cable between Sweden and Latvia on January 26. Authorities had immediately seized the cargo ship on suspicion it intentionally damaged the cable. But in a sudden turn, just 2 days ago, the Vesien has been released after the investigation found no wrongdoing. It was not the result of sabotage or any international plot, or intentional plot, I should say, investigators now say, as we had said before. And yes, a CIA front agency comes in from the cold to use intel speak. U.S. aid to merge with the State Department and face cuts. They're going to merge with face cuts? James, the robots aren't good at writing these headlines. I should show you. I got one from Billboard the other day after the big Grammy Awards on Sunday night. Quote, the headline, LGBTQ plus artist raised a middle finger to bigotry and erasure at the 2025 Grammys. Erasure's like, what? Give a little respect. We were helping. Gotta laugh a little bit. Speaking of the limeys, Tony Blair. I mean, hey, things are wild when we get Tony Blair to show back up again. He says digital ID will curb all this nasty populism and is backing expanded facial recognition and said the public will totally trade privacy for efficiency, or as was the album from Dead Kennedys years ago, give me convenience or give me death. James, oi.
Oi, indeed. As you say, we cannot cover all of these stories in the depth that they deserve. But anyway, in reverse chronological order, what did we have last there? Well, okay, on the USAID face cut story, I will have more to say on that shortly, so I'll hold my comments on that for the moment.
That's a biggie. That's a biggie.
Yeah, that's a biggie.
Stuck in there.
Yeah. As for, of course, rest in peace, Keith Harmon Snow. People might want to revisit my interview with him, or at the very least, my revisit of the Rwanda story from last year, which is an important story, and he did absolute yeoman's work in helping to bring that to light. And as you say, it's all still not just history, it is still with us, and the RPF and Kagame and what's happening in Congo now, and as a result of a Rwandan invasion, crazy stuff that if this was any other time in history, rather than literally the busiest I've ever been during the most chaotic news cycle in history, I would be devoting more attention to that. Anyway, I hope I do have time to cover that in more detail. Swedish, oops, sorry to keep your ship, guys. Yeah, okay, well, but of course the entire point of these types of stories is people remember the first headline, they never remember the retraction. So people just now think the Russians did it, right? And yes, on the AI thing, yeah, it's funny to think of Citizen Pichai writing his declarations of principles that he immediately goes back on there, right? But yes, ChatGPT Gov is, I mean, that is just, I want to say Orwellian, but we need a new phrase for this because it's beyond Orwell at this point. It is the instantiation of technocracy that we are being prepped for now, and it is being seeded into the public consciousness, and people are talking about it. Man, we need AI to run government, and I'm hearing that more and more, and Joe Rogan and others are just throwing that idea out there and seeding it into the public consciousness. We are being prepped for that, and they are literally working on it, and literally putting PR pieces out about it. Hey, we've got ChatGPT Gov. Are you a government who needs AI to run your business, run your empire for you? Here. So craziness, absolute craziness. We will keep our eye on all these stories, but we're only two guys. We can only do so much. So at the very least, as always, all the links will be in the show notes, and this time in particular, so many links to so many important stories. I hope people will get them. I hope people will share them out. This is important information, and we'll do our best. We'll continue doing our best to try to keep all these balls in the air.
You mentioned 1984. That book is now 80-some years. That's why Orwellian might not work anymore. All of that now will be replaced. What people will say, it was very Muskian. We run newworldnextweek.com for the hoodies, the hats, the shirts, which we've admittedly actually let the stock run down on a little bit, so I apologize if there's folks that really wanted that specific size. Sometimes it's good just to let your stock run down to see where you stand and see where the interest lies. Of course, we also have the DVDs, the USBs, and a lot of good stuff coming soon at newworldnextweek.com. A huge thanks, James. I'm going to say, we are just two guys, but also Brock, our video editor, and also Castbot for running New World Next Week, the store. She's running all the stores, all the products, all of that, and also for the handful of folks who send in their physical subscriptions via the post office box. You can send it in to Media Monarchy. You can find all that information at the bottom of MediaMonarchy.com. Get rid of the middlemen. So it could just be us. And of course, if you write a personal check, your bank. James, I also play the exclusive audio of these New World Next Week episodes after my Thursday morning show when only me, you, and Brock have heard them. And that is episode 580, buddy. My head's spinning.
Body massage. Body massage. Who wants a body massage? Okay, anyway. See you next time, buddy.
All right, man. Take care.